Eddie, this is our 100th episode.
Technically, it's 103 because we had to re-record a couple times, but yeah, I get the gist.
We've had some technical difficulties over here at MMHC, but we're back, baby, and we're recording. Right. It's going to be a good episode. In your best Vin Diesel voice, tell me what this episode is about.
Hold on.
I believe in you. You got this, Eddie.
What does he sound like? Family. That was lame. Holy shit. I'm embarrassed.
Don't be. That was pretty good. Like Vin Diesel just said, this episode is all about family. But this is our 100th episode. We want to celebrate a little bit. So, Eddie, what's been some of your favorite episodes from the show so far? We've been doing this 4 years, 100 episodes. What are your favorites?
I think the two that stick out are... This sounds really sad. The fentanyl and phone addiction one. And it's not for any other reason that I feel like I bring it up a decent amount in my work at school. These are just topics that come up a lot. Like at the high school, we are really working towards kids just not being on their phone all the time in class. So being able to spread that information is really helpful. The health class presentations I give in the second and third trimester of the school year is all about internet use and phone use, social media use. So that's really good information to share. And then the fentanyl one, like years ago when I was beginning my journey as a therapist, I was taking some specific drug and alcohol trainings. And I remember the guy saying specifically, a lot of people aren't talking about this, but fentanyl is going to be a really big issue. And I just kind of brushed it off because it was like 2:00 in the afternoon and I was just ready for the training to be done. But now, years later, I'm like, damn, that guy was right. He knew something. And fentanyl really is, it's out there. I think it was really important for us to put information out there for people to just know about and digest and think about and think twice. I mean, I know a lot of people who, maybe not a lot. A lot is not the word. I know people who use or have used things like cocaine recreationally, and that's something that you don't necessarily expect to have to worry about. But with the way, fentanyl is being used throughout the country to be cut into these drugs, it could be really dangerous and it could really put you at risk. So just for us to be able to share that information, I think was really helpful. I know I learned a lot in the research for that episode. So now anytime I listen to a podcast through NPR or New York Times, whatever, Wall Street Journal, and they talk about fentanyl, I'm always fact checking a little bit. Do they know what they're talking about? Most of the time they do. So just those two episodes I think have just stuck with me a lot. And really just things that I talk about a decent amount. What about you?
I would say my favorite episode was our episode with Sam, who is a rocket scientist. He is a little person. He is an athlete. Just because it was so much fun getting to know him. His mantra, his views on life were so positive. He has never let anything hold him back, and it was just such a good interview, and it was so fun to listen to him. And the fact that he put Elon Musk in his place just was probably one of the best lines from a guest we've ever had on the show. So if you want to know the line, go check out Sam's episode on the previous episodes.
You'll be able to tell which one it is because it's pretty
yes.
It's like a bombshell dropped in the episode. None of us know what to say after he talks about it.
Yeah, we're like, oh, he said that. Well, we really do feel like you guys have been with us for years. You listeners, we feel like many of you are family at this point. So we wanted to do an episode on family. That was my best Vin Diesel.
I think that was better.
Yeah, we'll call it the same. So and because you guys are family to us, we'd be so proud of you if you would subscribe to the show, gave us a 5-star review. Really helps us grow, really helps the show spread our message, which we really like. We always are all about spreading a positive mental health message, and we like to have a fun mental health message. One thing we've noticed about mental health podcasts is that they're never really that much fun. We like to laugh. We like to use humor. So help us spread our show. Give us a 5-star review. Tell a friend about it. I think that's an important part, is word of mouth with our show too. So if you know someone who may be interested in mental health, someone struggling with mental health, send them our show, and hopefully they find Eddie as incredibly charming and quick-witted as I do.
Hopefully. Actually, one of our most recent comments on Apple Podcasts did talk about our wide breadth of topics, while also being funny. So that was pretty cool. It's cool to get things like that. I don't know. It's one thing for my mom to tell me that she's proud of me on this show, but it's a whole nother thing for someone that I have no idea who they are to tell me. So that's what I judge my self-worth on.
Pretty cool. Well, and then when we're talking about family today, we certainly don't mean family in the traditional sense of the word. Family is really whoever you love like family, whoever you consider to be family. So, Eddie, let's start with a story time. Hit me with a story.
Yeah, in preparation for the episode, I think I took it as what you just said of things that kind of extend beyond the traditional family or people. I gave a talk recently in one of our freshman classes, and they asked what was I like in high school, or did I have any regrets or anything in high school? And one thing I did tell them was I wish I would have done other activities sooner, gotten more involved, because before really freshman, sophomore year was I went to school, I played football, I went home. In the off season was I went to school, I worked out for football, I went home. And it wasn't until in my junior year that I started to branch out a little more, do some more activities. And that's when I really started to meet more friends and friends that I'm still friends with to this day. Being in their weddings recently, that kind of thing. Then moving to Pacific, hundreds of miles away, still being close with them, still having them as part of my family, but then meeting new people who are part of my family today. And when you were talking about Sam's episode, it made me think we met Sam through our mutual friend Kush, and I met Kush because they all went to school with Colby and Ryan, and then I met Kevy because she's went to school with Colby and Ryan. So it was just this extension of family that I've been fortunate enough to have while living far away from my own traditional family has been really helpful for me, for my mental health, just in my overall sense of feeling connected and feeling fulfilled and feeling like I have a support system. So I think that's my wide general story. It's not really a story, it's just all these examples of how my non-traditional and traditional family kind of keep me whole.
Yeah, I feel you. I felt like at our wedding we had to really pare it down because of COVID, but we had all family and friends there, and I really felt like it was all family. Your friends become your family. It's such a cool thing.
Yeah.
My story for today, when I was about 12 or 13 years old, I had somewhat of a conflict with my mother, and I felt like she was still treating me somewhat like a child, and I wanted to be treated more like an adult. So, for example, I'd be watching TV, and my mom would come in and shut off the TV and say hey, it's time to be done with TV, go do something else. And I was kind of angry at her, and I was like, she needs to start treating me like an adult. So I went to my dad to vent about it. And after telling him my frustration, he said, well, let's go talk to her. Let's go talk to your mom about your frustrations. And my initial reaction was oh shit, no, that's not what you do. Dad, you're just supposed to listen and not actually do anything about it. But he was right. So we approached my mom. I told her how I was feeling, and she reacted perfectly. It was great. She listened. She agreed that maybe she was treating me like a child in some ways, validated my feelings, and made a promise to try and treat me more like an adult, the way I wanted to be treated. And I just really love this story because I really do see it as a very pivotal point in my life. I learned about communication, if you have a problem with a family member, actually talking it out, resolving conflict, telling them how you feel. And my mom demonstrated exactly how to take feedback as a parent. And so I meet so many families that have no idea how to communicate. They feel like they're just constantly walking on eggshells around each other. And they mostly just avoid each other because they've never really fixed any of their problems in the past, and they're afraid it's just going to escalate into more problems. So I know I've said it many times on the show, but you have to invest time in your family and your family relationships. You have to spend good times together if you want your kids to trust you in the bad times. You have to learn how to communicate, problem solve, resolve conflict. And I've met families that never really learn these things, and it slowly tears them apart. So if there's one thing I want you guys to take from this episode, it is resolve conflict. Learn how to listen. Learn how to fix and repair relationships.
Yeah. It's like I guess I don't know. I'm not saying like a school is like parents or like children or the children. Like I'm not saying that's like a family, but like one thing that we've worked on the last, now my third year going into being there, was like the cell phone policy. We had a really hard time. I don't, never mind, not we. The school had a really hard time of like just enforcing it. And what ended up happening was it didn't get enforced early. So then trying to enforce it later in the year, like you were shit out of luck. Like you weren't gonna be able to do it. And I know this year we've had a really big push to enforce it early and often, so that it's just like a part of the school culture that like this is just what you do. You go to class, you're not on your phone all day. Like that's just what you're supposed to do. Kind of similar with families. Like if something that you want a family to be, or your family to be doing, is to have conversations or to talk through things, that's part of the family culture. That's part of what's normal with the family. And being able to do that early and often makes it so that later down the line, when there is more difficult things to talk about, it's easier to talk about them. It's almost like too, like if you have like a coach or a boss who like comes in and is like, I don't want to say timid, but just like really like lax and like laid back, and then one day they try and be like really rigid and like a hard ass. That's kind of hard to fall in line with. Like it just like it almost takes you back. Like whoa, you're doing too much. So yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. I have seen that too, like on my end. A lot of families who like don't talk about conflict or don't resolve it right away, or just don't do anything about it, and it causes more problems later on.
Yeah, and I certainly don't want to be like, parents stink, but that's usually how that's usually what the parents had growing up too, and that was modeled to them, and they don't know another way. That's a lot of that generational trauma. So I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus here. Yeah. Some stats and facts we want to give you guys. So in America, the family unit has changed quite a bit over the past few decades. In 1969, the year of our moon, the 89% of families had two parents in the household. And in 2014, this dropped down to 69%, so a decrease of 20% total. And this is really important because being a single parent in a home is super hard. It's very stressful. And it's really hard on the kids, too, and the parents. So one study from the National Institute of Mental Health looked at inpatient psychiatric admissions. So these are the kids who are struggling with suicide, depression, to the point where they need to be in an inpatient psychiatric hospital. 89% of admissions came from families with a disrupted family structure. In our professions, we see how hard it is on kids when parents divorce or parents pass away even.
Mm-hmm. There's also a study that found that 2/3 of kids had been exposed to childhood trauma. So the kids who had been admitted into these treatment programs. Going back to what you were saying, Justin, of like seeing how hard it is on kids who deal with like parent divorce or parent passes away. Like I've had kids in my office who are just like so like eloquently for their age talking about like, yeah, mom and dad are getting divorced. They don't realize, you know, how much it's impacting us or impacting me or my siblings, and like are able to communicate that. But like when they try to bring stuff up to the parents just like don't want to hear it. And it's really hard. Like you have kids who like have these really well thought out thoughts, not being able to communicate it to their parents because there's no like culture of that in their household.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. For parents looking on their end, you know, being a single parent is very stressful. Being a parent, Justin, I know you could probably attest to this. Just being a parent in general is stressful. Being a single parent, I can only imagine how much more stressful it is. Single parents, whether we've seen this anecdotally or statistically, are more likely to have a second job to support their families. So that means they have less time bonding with their children. I've heard a lot about parents who are like, you know, I got to go to work in the morning after I take them to school, and then after they're off from school, I see them for a little bit, and then I got to go to my second job, and then they're just doing it over and over again just to make ends meet. Unfortunately, single parents are a lot more likely to have mental health problems, have a lower socioeconomic status, and be more stressed. If you're constantly worrying about how you're going to provide for your kids, how you're going to make certain bill payments, all of those things, it piles on. And for a lot of people, they're able to manage stress for X amount of time. I tell kids all the time, like for a lot of us, we can manage stress for weeks, months, years. But eventually it finally all comes out and we're not able to hold it in anymore. And that leads to worse problems down the line.
Mm-hmm. I will say, I think if I had to be a single parent, I would be suffering. I would be really struggling. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine doing this without a partner that I trust and love. And Yeah, and especially so many single parents have to have two jobs to support their family. It's too much for one person, and it's too common in our society.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what makes a healthy family. So according to Psychology Today, which is our trusted resource for mental health issues, so some of the things that really make a healthy family are respecting healthy emotional and physical boundaries. Seems pretty obvious. I think a lot of these things will be pretty obvious, but we think it's important to state them. Seeing each family member as an individual with an opinion. That is so important. I see a lot of families who parents really invalidate all the thoughts and feelings of their children. So like kids will be like, I feel like, and parents will say, you don't feel that way. That's not what's happening. And that is more, in those situations, those kids are more likely to develop personality disorders and depression and anxiety. Because if you're constantly being told that what you feel and what you think is not real, is not really happening, that really messes with your head psychologically. Setting consistent, fair, and age-appropriate rules and expectations is also really important. Having that structure in the family.
Yeah. Some other things include meeting each person's needs appropriately. So like actually figuring out what they need. I tell kids a lot, when they're having a hard time with their parents of like, my parents do this when I'm having a hard time, but that's not what I want. On one end, you're like, well, your parents only know what they know. So this is an opportunity for us to teach them how to meet your needs appropriately. But on the other end is we want to help empower our kids to be able to communicate what those needs are, so that they can say them in a timely manner so they can get their needs met. The next one is all members of the family feeling safe and secure. And then the last part is expecting mistakes and forgiving them in a healthy way. So not making like your love conditional, or like I only love or support you when you do this or when you do that. It's just making sure that mistakes are going to happen, talking through it, kind of like Justin was talking about with this story with his family earlier, and then working through that and making sure that people feel like their opinions are respected, and that they're able to problem solve appropriately.
Now, on the flip side, let's talk about some dysfunctional features of families. So families that have a lot of addiction. And, man, we see this all the time in the mental health world. If people are struggling with addiction, it's just hard to have a functional, healthy family. I would say 90% of the kids that I see who go through extreme trauma do so because their parents are severely addicted to drugs or alcohol. So addiction's a big one, especially in the United States. We struggle more with addiction in this country than we did a whole episode on this, and I think we are the worst country in terms of addiction problems. Other qualities are perfectionism, families that are abusive and neglectful, and unpredictability and fear.
I mentioned earlier this idea of conditional love. So having conditional love in your family, having that as part of the culture, not only has that feeling of eggshells, walking around on eggshells for the kids, but also teaches them like inappropriate boundaries and making them feel like, if this is what I know, then this is what I'm going to seek in future relationships. And we know that's not necessarily helpful or healthy. Lacking boundaries. So, I talked about earlier the boss who's really laid back or chill, relaxed, the cool boss. But then when they have to try and be a hard ass, people have a hard time reacting to that. So parents not having any boundaries ever and just letting kids do whatever they want to do all the time. It's really hard to backtrack that. We've seen that a lot with kids, like seeing kids who just like flat out will not give their phone to their parents or will not give their phone to teachers because they're just not used to doing it. Like that's really hard to come back from. The last two things are lack of intimacy, so showing affection for our kids or our other family members, and then poor communication, if we're just not able to talk things through or we're just not even communicating at any point.
Yeah, there are so many things that we all could be working on to improve our family dynamics. But if you do have a dysfunctional family, like, what are some things you can do? How can you make things better? I think any and all families should be working on improving. Even healthy, good families. There's always something to learn. There's always something to get better on. And I could think of nothing more important than trying to improve those family bonds. Maybe my dad made me watch The Godfather too much growing up, but it's all about family. I guess we could go back to Vin Diesel references, but we won't. We've been there. We've done that. So what you can do, consider family therapy. I think family therapy is a wonderful tool, and there are so many families that would benefit from this. And having a therapist who can model love, compassion, understanding, and show you how to have that healthy communication style can be so useful in trying to mend your family relationships.
Yeah. Having a learner's mindset too is also really helpful. Just understanding that we all have room to grow. We can all make improvements. We're not all perfect. If we're expecting to be perfect, then we're already behind. So let's not worry about that. Let's more worry about correcting whatever it is that we make mistakes on.
Understand that it's not all your fault. And this is tricky because sometimes when I tell parents that I'm recommending family therapy for them, the parents say like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Now, I don't have anything wrong with me. Like, I'm fine. You need to fix my kid. It's like, that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say that a lot of these unhealthy communication styles, these unhealthy characteristics in families are passed down from generation to generation. And we tend to repeat what is modeled to us. So try not to be defensive. Try and keep an open mind. Don't say like, whoa, it's not my fault, but say, what can I do to make this better? Because, man, if you're defensive and you put your guard up, nothing's going to change.
Yeah. There are some people who like to learn from reading, who like to just gain knowledge that way. So we do have some books that can be helpful. The first one is The Body Keeps Score. That's been a very popular one, not just in like pop psychology, but just in general. You see it at like every single bookstore, talking about how trauma impacts us throughout our lives. The next one is called It Didn't Start With You. And then the last one we have for you is The Glass Castle.
And the last two tips and tricks we got for you for improving your family relationships is invest time in your family. I can't tell you how many times parents say like, oh, I want to have a better relationship with my kids. And I ask them, how much time are you spending together? And they're like, oh, well, we don't really spend time together. I'm like, that's step number one. You gotta be there in the good times. And then, honestly, what has been helpful for my wife and I is we actually got a relationship app called Paired, Paired, and it's been really fun because it prompts you with a question every single day that you both have to answer. You both have to compare your answers and discuss them. And it'll ask you things like, hey, when you're angry, how do you want your spouse to respond? Like, what do you need from them in that moment? It's been a great way to ask the questions that are difficult to ask in our society and learn each other and learn how to manage each other, how to make each other feel healthy, respected, and loved in our relationship. And I know there's also a lot of workbooks and things out there, like relationship workbooks that you can do together. I think just putting that time in, having that learner's mindset, and doing something to try and improve your relationship can be useful.
This isn't necessarily like relationship focused, but on the iPhone, like with the newest operating system, so iOS 17, they have a new like mood tracker thing where it can like, you can actually make it so it prompts you at the end of the day to like fill out the little questionnaire. And I've done it the last couple of days and it's pretty cool. So I just wanted to share that too. It's like another resource. We're already on our phones, so might as well. I actually have it as like a widget on the front on my home screen to remind me like at some point to do it. So yeah, just wanted to share that too.
Cool. Yeah, and that's the beauty and the tragedy of phones. We got a lot of options, but we're also on those things for way too much every day.
Yeah. Moving into discussion questions. If you remember, the topic is about family, Vin Diesel's favorite topic. So Justin, my question for you is there like a family related reason why you enjoy doing this podcast or why you do this podcast in general?
Yeah, I'm kind of weird. I'm always kind of thinking decades into the future, like legacy-wise. Like, what do I want to leave behind in this earth? And I've always wanted to do something like a podcast so that I could have one day, if anything ever actually happens to me, I can have my children or the people I love have something to remember me by. Episodes of me spreading love, my ideas, the things I find important in this world, educating, talking, teaching. And I hope this never happens, but just in case like I ever do pass away early, I really want my son to know who I am. And I think I have put myself into this podcast, and I think I just hope that if he ever listens to this one day, that he feels that I just want to spread as much love, compassion, and understanding in this world as I possibly can. How about you,
Beautiful.
my friend? Oh, thank you.
Not as good of an answer. I don't know. I think just like getting to share things that I care about with people and like my extended family, and like I think for me going into my career like early on, of thinking of like what are ways that I can impact the field, maybe not like on a national level, but just like in my community or people around me outside of just like the work that I do. And I think being able to do this podcast has given me that opportunity. Like we've gotten to do so many cool things because of the podcast and meet so many cool people. And like, you know, you did your TED talk. Like I've gotten to go on like the live news a couple times. Like that, just stuff like that is super cool that we then get to share with our family and our extended family. So I think, I guess what I would say in short is that I feel motivated by my family and extended family to do this and to keep going. So I think that's going to be my answer.
That's pretty cool. And your family is super supportive and loving, which is pretty neat. Vulnerability moment. Yeah, you got a great family. Vulnerability moment. Like, what's something you could be doing better with family, with relationships?
Probably just communicate more, not more, quicker, take the more out. I think I just have a hard time with feeling like be able to say like what I'm thinking right away and like not wanting to like mess it up. So I think I keep stuff to myself a lot. And it's funny because we teach kids to like not do that. And like to be able to like communicate effectively. But I still struggle with it. So I would say that.
It's not easy. And in a lot of ways our society discourages us from saying what we actually speak. We like get backlash for saying the things we actually think, I should say. I would say for me, something I could do better is something I've learned is that my wife's love language is touch. And she likes touch, physical touch. And I'm actually not the most touchy person in the world. And so I've been trying to make an effort to engage more in physical touch because it's not second nature to me. It's something I have to remind myself to do. So that's something I've been trying to work on, but I could always improve on it.
No. What about family and your own mental health and happiness? Like, how important has that been for you?
The family is everything to my mental health. I feel like I still should go to therapy. I keep telling myself this for the past couple of years, but I feel like I don't necessarily need it because I really do have amazing family that act like a therapist for me in a lot of different ways. Especially because sometimes this job that we have in pediatric and adolescent mental health, it can be stressful. It can be hard. And sometimes I get some of that vicarious trauma where I talk to a young person who has been through so much that it really hits me. And, you know, sometimes I'll be talking to my wife at the dinner table and I'll kind of be talking about this case, this patient, what they're telling me, and I'll kind of slowly ramp up, and before I know it, I'm just bawling. I'm just crying my eyes out right at the dinner table, or just in between some, beef stew or something. I'm just tears flowing everywhere, and my wife is just so good at holding me, comforting me in those moments, letting me get it out. She doesn't say, "Stop crying. Oh, you're fine. It's not that bad." She lets it happen. She lets me get it out, and she does exactly what she needs to do in those moments. And in addition to that, too, I felt like growing up, my mom was that for me, where I remember coming home from college and just talking to her for like 4 hours straight, just getting everything out from the past couple of weeks. And she sat and listened. I think my mom and my dad taught me how to listen, and that's what helps me be a better psychiatrist. And so family has been everything to me in terms of my mental health. How about you, my man?
Yeah. I think just always knowing that you have, or that I have people like supporting me has been really helpful, and knowing that like, no matter what, like they'll still love me and care about me, and I think that's more than a lot of the kids that we work with can say. So it's like wanting to acknowledge that and take advantage of that and use that as like, I guess, strength and ability to be able to give to kids what they don't necessarily have in their own homes. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What's your take-home point for today, my friend?
Family.
Family. It's all about family.
What about you? That's all I got, bro. I don't know.
Leaving it on family. I like it. I would say, like I said earlier, learn how to repair your relationships. In psychology, we have this concept of rupture and repair. Every single relationship is going to have breaks, or what we call ruptures. There are going to be things that are not good. There are going to be miscommunications. There are going to be not meeting each other's expectations. That's okay. That's normal. As long as you learn how to go back, fix it, learn, and grow from it. That's what makes healthy relationships. That's what makes strong relationships. Relationships that get better with time. And that is the most important thing.
Hell yeah. Well, this is it. Episode 103. Episode 100, take 3. How about that?
Yes, there we go. I think that's more accurate.
Well, we made it to 100. People said we weren't going to be able to do it. There was a lot of naysayers, in our DMs every day. You're never going to make it to 100.
I didn't think we were going to make it to 100. Yeah.
I'm just kidding. There was no naysayers, but I guess Justin was one of them.
Was the one and only. We suck.
But seriously, thank you guys so much for the last almost 4 years. Our 4-year anniversary is next month. We'll be on episode like 102 by then, 103. So stick around for that special episode. I'll wrap us up and just say, you know where to find us. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever other app you use. On Apple Podcasts, we'd love to see your 5-star review or a comment if you'd love to share it. On Spotify, you can also leave us a 5-star review and whatever question you have about the newest episode. Follow us on social media, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube? Yes, YouTube. Twitter. We're never going to call it X. At Millennial MHC. And as always, for the 100th time, maybe not 100th time. I don't know if we said it every single time. But for whatever number time, take care, y'all mentals.